All right, so tonight we're going to do, like we always do, just review our first 6 lessons of sales track. We're going to do a pretty quick review of that. And then we're going to go into personality types. And we are fortunate to have Dr. Joan Hackenstad on the phone in this particular arena. That is what she has her degree studying in psychology. And as you all know, she's Dr. Joan Hackenstad, so she is a doctorate. And we're very fortunate to have her on the call with us this evening, especially since what we're going to be going into is personality types. And we'll be taking a look at the DISC method of evaluation of personality types. But with that having been said, let's just move forward here real quick. Our first 6 lessons of sales track, the first thing you should always do is sit down and make your list. Come up with your names, the people you're going to get in touch with. Anybody that you meet when you're in this phase, when you're trying to build your business. Anytime you're in this phase, it's very important that everyone you meet, every name that you have, your phone, every asset that you have, you put those into some type of contact management system. Dare I say, put them right into your back office and then weed through them and evaluate them that way. You have them already in there. You have everything that you need. But at the very least, sit down and come up with a list and move forward on that list. It's one thing to come up with the list. It's another thing to pick up that 400-pound telephone and start making the phone calls. When you make the phone calls, or if you're meeting people in person, you have to have a 15-second commercial. We have delved deep into this. Your 15-second commercial is what you do for a living without really describing what you do for a living. Joan has brought to our attention the concept of here is a situation or a problem, and here's a resolution. Well, you know how in so-and-so market, so-and-so place, so-and-so environment, ABC occurs. Well, what I do is I show people how to undo that. A 15-second commercial should be engaging. It should grab their attention enough that they want to know more and move forward. But right in that same context with the 15-second commercial is your use of qualifiers and tie downs, because once you put out that 15-second commercial or that idea of what you do, I mean, if you're doing phone calls, it could be as simple as saying, hey, Joe, is your house paid off? Give me a call back. Or when you get them on the phone, say, hey, Joe, I'm working for this company now. I really enjoy what I'm doing. I need to practice on people. Can I practice on you? These are people that you know. If they're not people that you know, doing it by cold call can be very arduous, but it can also be very rewarding because you get a lot of different responses and you come up with a lot of different ways to field those responses. But do know with your 15-second commercial, the way you approach that individual, that first blush, what you do needs to catch their attention. And then once they respond to you, you have to be ready to move that forward with the use of qualifiers, tie downs, things like, oh, so that does interest you. I can see that interests you. Would you like to know more about that? Let me go a little bit deeper for you. And that may be a perfect time to throw in that personal or borrowed story and say, let me just tell you what it's done for me. Now, if I could show you how to do that, back to use of qualifiers and tie downs. When you're in this phase, this first blush, remember the first 6 lessons of sales track is your first real interaction with the person. It is your introduction of you, the product, your company. Be very particular. Be very defined about the information you're putting there, and above all, be relevant. We talk a lot in your 6 lessons of sales track about how to kind of pick out their value propositions, what is important to them. We talk about the fact that it's very important to ask more questions than it is to talk. It's more important to get that individual on a playing field where they're opening up in an arena that allows you to alter or manipulate your presentation of the materials and the product to where now it is of value to the client, and in fact the client is choosing the product rather than you being in a position of, come on, don't you want to just take a look at the video, which never works anyway. What we do know is that our clients have to want this. A lot of people don't know that they need it. They know they don't want it because they don't know about it, but a lot of people don't know they need it, but most people that have debt do need it. And what our job is to expose the information to them. It's not about, hard sales tactics. It's about revealing the information to them and using the tools. The tools takes them through the steps of your first introduction with Sales Track and moving them to an appointment. As we see as our sixth step, our litmus test as being a qualifier in there on a scale of 1 to 5. Where do you find yourself with your desire to get out of debt, to use a program that will help you get out of debt? Your use of qualifiers and tie downs moves into things like, have you ever used debt elimination programs? Have you ever tried to pay off your debt in an accelerated fashion? Are you sending additional money to your credit cards currently? All of these things are in this first kind of interaction with them, asking about the credit cards and things of that nature comes when you're actually a little bit deeper, but asking if they've tried to use debt elimination programs, have they tried to get out of debt before, is about a midway conversation question. So these first 6 lessons of Sales Track are designed to put you kind of in a driver's seat moving into that first appointment. In our sales process, we gain interest with our first 6 lessons of Sales Track. In step 2, we send videos or send them to a webinar. We do a presentation in person. However you do this, you are setting up an appointment for this. You want to set a deadline. When you set up time with your client, when you use the first 6 lessons, when you set up your first, second, third appointment, whatever it is, for them to watch videos, for you all to get on the phone together, do it as an appointment. It's very official. It makes you look like you're really planning your time, and it will also hold your prospect a lot more accountable. Your first appointment is to run the analysis, whether you're setting that up with the corporate office or you're doing that yourself or doing it with a field closer like Darlene Preston. Your first appointment, gather the numbers, build rapport, and set that follow-up appointment during that first appointment. Make sure you get the information. Make sure you go back to your qualifiers and your tie-downs from your introduction when you're in that first appointment. Make sure you're continually moving the process forward. And the best way to ensure that you are moving the process forward is continue to make appointments and hold them accountable to it. But the other way is give them the information they need. Give them the buying information they need to move forward and move the process forward. The second appointment, you want to review results and close. Those are our basics that we go into for our sales process. Now, what I'd like to do at this point is I'd like to jump over here and I'd like to get to Dr. Joan. And let me get over here to Joan. Joan, do we have you?
Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
I am well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing very well. It's always a pleasure to have you on the call. And since we're doing personality types, I thought it was very appropriate to have you on the call. So what I would like to do is I'll kind of go through the basic information on the first 2 slides, and you just, if you have any commentary, if not, when we get to the actual disc slides, if you want to kind of take over and kind of take the lead on that, that would be awesome for me. Or I can take the lead and you can make commentary there. I just want to have an open discussion about that. Do you feel comfortable with that?
Sure, sounds good to me.
All right, so tell everybody, what you did prior to you first and your familiarity with DISC and why it is that you're the individual that I have you on the call to do this with.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the call. For those of you that do not know, I am a recovered shrink. So I used to practice in psychology. My specialty is actually crisis intervention. I used to deal with suicidal, homicidal, psychotic individuals, people that were in imminent danger to themselves or others. And my job was to come in, either in a hospital setting or out in the field, assess the situation, assess the lethality of the individual, talk them off the ledge or talk them to put the gun down, and hopefully end in a good day. I did this for a number of years, again, both in the hospital as well as outpatient as well. And I'm very blessed to have said that I've never lost a single patient to suicide or homicide. So very blessed in that regard, but part of that comes into play because it is all about situational assessment. You have to be able to come into a situation, assess not only the surroundings, but the personality type of the individual in front of you. How do you relate to them? How do you build rapport in the shortest time frame possible? And how do you get them to be motivated enough to change and to adjust and to do what you want them to do? So I have a lot of experience in that, and part of that does come down to DISC. There's literally thousands of different personality assessments out there. In my master's program, this was one of the largest one that we concentrated on was the DISC program, and it's a phenomenal and somewhat easy system to learn so that you can really easily identify the attributes of the other person and be able to flex your style to that person so that, again, you can build rapport so that you can know what approach is best for that person. So it's about knowing yourself, it's about knowing the person in front of you and how to adjust yourself so that you can best work with that person and help them see the benefit of what we provide. It's to help them know the common motivators, the common tendencies, and help them move forward. Did I lose you?
You said something very important there, and that was understanding ourselves as much as understanding them. With the personality kind of models that are available, we know we have DISC and Myers-Briggs and MBTI and Kersey. There's all different types of programs out there to do this kind of analysis of behaviors. We find the DISC model kind of really spells it out the deepest that I've seen. And what I need you to understand is when we talk about these first 6 lessons or introducing to people or getting to know people or making something pointed or how do we get across to somebody quickly, personality study is something that takes a long time. But there are some basic fundamental traits that people display, and there are some basic approaches, and that's what we're going to look at this evening. And tonight we're just going to deal with there's 4 personality traits in the DISC model. We're going to deal with 2 of those this week and talk about 2 of them next week as well. So we will be focusing on using DISC. The dynamics of the 4 aspects of DISC, they create a powerful and simple picture of strengths, potential, and how the individual communicates and approaches other people and tasks. I think many of you, if you've been in sales, you've looked at personality testing or personality charts at one time or another. If you've been in school, a lot of vocations now for hiring utilize these and have been in the past. It is a very good barometer if you have that ability to see it in the individual. And I think as we go through this, what I want you to do is think about people in your life that fit some of these personality traits and how you deal with those people. I find that when I'm trying to relate to somebody as a prospect, I feel that I understand my family very well, and my family has maybe I'm lucky in this, has very diametrically opposed personalities. I'm an extremely aggressive personality. My wife is extremely passive and empathetic. My son is very passive, and my daughter is aggressive, but all 4 of us exhibit different characteristics about how we go about that. And so in my own family, understanding what the DISC model was helped me to understand how I could better adjust myself. And that's, I think, a big part of this when I say it's important that we understand ourselves. Once we understand ourselves and we understand who we're communicating with, it becomes more possible for us to adjust our demeanor or our presentation. That doesn't mean we completely chameleon on the person, although I have seen some people that can do that very successfully. But being able to adjust our personalities up or down, these personality theories and models can be applied in all areas, not just in your business life, but your family life, your personal life, things of that nature as well. So at our first blush, this is the basic 4 quadrants of the DISC personality. You have dominant, you have inspiring, you have cautious and supportive. And I think many of us that have been around these types of models and been around sales, education, things of that nature, again, like I said, where you've dealt with these, can probably pick out different words for these 4 things, but these are the words that that we're going to utilize so we don't get confused. You can see there is different quadrants, the 4 quadrants that go DISC, and then you have your kind of intersection line there on DISC with outgoing and reserved people versus task. And these separating lines would go all the way across, and that's what would create the quadrant. So somebody that's inspiring would be people-oriented and outgoing. Someone that's dominant would be task-oriented and outgoing. Someone that's cautious would be task-oriented and reserved. And someone that's supportive would be people-oriented and reserved. Now, do understand this. No one person just fits into one category. If you do, that is very unusual. That's very rare. Typically, we exhibit all 4 of these characteristics in most personalities. It's just 2 tend to be the most dominant and 2 tend to be very subdued and passive. A lot of people may have 1 quadrant that's highly dominant, a second that's powerful, not quite as dominant as that first, and then the latter 2 trail off. But I want you to understand that no one person fits into any one quadrant when we're talking about personalities. Dr. Joan, would you have anything you'd like to chime in? I'm going to move into a little bit more detailed on the DISC personality quadrants and information with that. Is there anything you'd like to add to where I'm at right now?
No, I think you're on top of it. I guess the only thing I would add is, as you just said, as you're going through sales track and as you're introducing Worth Unlimited to other people, you're going to undoubtedly interact with a wide array of people. This is really designed to not only help you identify yourself better, but help you identify how to interact with that person. So we're also going to talk about what motivates each of these different quadrants as well. How do you really motivate that dominant person, the inspiring, the supportive, the cautious? So we'll get through that. Now, these are the words that we're going to use tonight, but don't be surprised if you ever do any research on the DISC. There are some other words that are also used for those 4 areas. Dominant could be driver. Inspiring is often influence. Supportive is often steadiness. And cautious is often conscientiousness. Now, I say that because I know that one of the other slides in here does list the other 4 words, so I just don't want you to be surprised. These are just common words that are being used inside of the DISC. So you might have dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness instead of what you're seeing on the screen.
Absolutely. Thank you. I think that's a good point. The idea behind DISC is the words will change on the DISC model, so just be aware of that. And if you just look up on Google and look up DISC personality testing, look up images, you'll find a lot of different words for these. So,
and if I may add one other thing, if I may just add one other thing, and forgive me, you'll also find that there's, like I said before, thousands of other personality assessments out there. You're going to find most of them do fall and revert back to these 4 main quadrants. So you're going to find that there's a whole bunch of different assessment personalities out there, or personality assessments out there, but most of them will have these main 4 quadrants just with different names. So it doesn't matter what you're studying, you'll find that there's a correlation with this as well.
Okay, excellent. All right, so tonight what we're going to look at is dominant and inspiring, or driver and influential, or the idea is come up with something that really resonates with you. But the idea behind the dominant is they're very direct, demanding, decisive, determined. They're a doer. This type of individual wants the information. They want it quick and they want it to the point. That's where I'm going to start with that. Our inspiring person is an influence, is influencing. They're impressionable. They're interactive. They're impressive. They're involved. We're going to go a little bit deeper on these. Now, I want you to understand, even inside of dominant, you can have varying degrees of that dominance. Like I mentioned, that people have other aspects of these personality traits involved where they're concerned. So even if someone is basically inspiring, they can be a little bit more on the outgoing side, a little bit less on the people-oriented side, or maybe they might even have a little bit of reservation about them, but they're just very influencing and inspiring on how they go about things. Your dominant person, what you're going to find with their information is quick and to the point. With the inspiring person, they want to have a conversation. They want to be interactive with you. They want to believe that you both came to a decision together. They love teamwork and things of that nature. If we look here in dominance, the strengths are comfortable in leadership role. They're problem solvers. They can make tough decisions. They're not afraid to confront issues. They see change as a challenge, stays focused on the mission. The limitations that you're going to find with somebody that's dominant is they can be intimidating, intensive. I don't even know what that word is. Joan, do you know what that word is? Brusque?
Short, very short.
Is
very
that what it is?
brisk.
Short, brusque.
Yeah.
Am I pronouncing that correct? Wow. Got a new one on me. Patient, intolerant, and unapproachable. So I think you can see with an individual in sales, if you're dealing with somebody that can be intimidating, intensive, short, impatient, intolerant, unapproachable, you're going to have this very, very small window to get their attention or to try to move forward with this particular individual. Some examples of this type of person are Vince Lombardi, Norman Schwarzkopf, Jane Fonda, Margaret Thatcher, and George Patton. And I think if we look at that list, we can see that these are pretty strong-willed individuals. Influence, or our individual, if we look at our influencer, achieves success by persuading others to work with them towards the goal. So they're a team player, always available for others, inspiring to be around, spreads positive attitude, praises others. Their largest limitations are tasks fall through the cracks, projects don't get finished, lack of organization. This type of person is a big idea person, needs somebody probably as an exec, to take care of their personal stuff and their spreadsheets and things of that nature. This is a big picture person. Willard Scott, Muhammad Ali, Tracy Ullman, Magic Johnson, Bill Clinton, Katie Couric. These two really pose a very unique challenge. With the dominant person, you have to really be on your game, and you have to be able to come up to their level and give them the information they need. With the influential person, you have to be able to carry that conversation and show true interest in what they're having, and come to this as a joint decision that you're making. Your dominant driver, some of the typical vocations that you're going to find for your dominant driver is going to be your president, your VP, CEOs, business owners, foremans, sales managers, site managers, self-starters. When you're approaching a driver, they want the information fast, doesn't care about minute details. They want the big picture. They want the bottom line. So if you're going to be approaching somebody that's dominant, you might not have time for a 15-second commercial. You might just have time for 7 seconds and say, you know how everybody's struggling right now to get equity in their home. We show people how to acquire equity much quicker. So many people are upside down in their homes right now. We show people how to acquire equity. We show people how to profit in a downturn market. And this is only for certain areas. Some areas of the United States, the housing market is going absolutely astronomical. It's going gangbusters. We're seeing interest rates start to go up a little bit, but we're still seeing a very broad market. So I think the best thing I can tell you with the dominant or the driver is don't bore them. Don't give them all the facts and figures and how long you've been around. Get to the point with them. Get to the point of how impactful this is, how exciting it is to see people get out of debt, how simplistic the program is to use, how we can show him how everything works. This individual isn't going to want to take a lot of time. They're going to want to see results. So this is a person you would move right into an analysis if you had the opportunity, the first appointment, get that analysis, and then do a second appointment to go over the results. Their style, the driver likes to control the sale and pace. They are results focused, opinionated, and make quick decisions. If you do not know how to deal with dominant individuals, drivers, this is something that you really can take a little bit of time or take a little bit of moxie to come up to. But if you know your information, you know your tools, you know how to navigate them through, this may be an individual and they want to know that you're in control of this entire situation. They want the control, but they want to know that you're capable and that you can get the job done. Selling approach, small talk irritates them, so be direct, be to the point, talk fast but clear, and substantiate any claims you make. Don't just throw nonsense out there. These people will catch you, they'll call you on it. And for just a broad section period, I just want to make sure you understand with the program, don't just throw nonsense out there. Always look to the tools that you have in place and the tools that are available to you, and let them do the talking for you. Make sure you get accurate numbers. Make sure that you represent their savings, the findings of the program, and things of this nature to the best of your ability. If you want to go to that website, you can find a lot more. I wanted to put that website up there because that's where I got a lot of this information. And so, Dr. Jones?
So can I chime in? Yeah.
Yes, I moved the screen. I'm going to move the screen one more just to pull up that, that large dominant screen there. And then go ahead. You.
So how do you spot that dominant person, which, by the way, do you think either Mac or I might be dominant? Mac is actually not, but I am. I'm a very strong, high-strung driver. I am a very dominant type person. I know that's a shocker, right? So how do you identify that person that is that dominant person? First of all, they have a very firm handshake. They tend to have steady eye contact. Now, that's only if they're interested. So we'll start with that strong eye contact, but when you start doing a lot of small talk, you'll notice that we start shifting our eyes and we start looking away. We're not trying to be shifty, we're not trying to be shady, but we're losing interest, so you need to get back on track with us. Gestures. We use a lot of gestures. We often do display impatience, and it's because we want you to get to the point. We're very driven and very motivated by people that will get to the point. We don't want these long-winded conversations. We don't want the small talk. We don't want any of that. So we will display that impatience. We will have that fast-moving body language. And believe it or not, we actually just like, for the most part, being casually touched by people, especially by people we don't know. I know that sounds kind of like a strange thing, but we really just don't like that casual touching. Now, again, these are just generalities. This is not true for everybody, but this is generalities for people that have that dominant trait. But we do have big gestures. We do tend to lean forward, and we do advance and very quickly, and we can come across very pushy. Other things to look for in the workspace. Somebody that has a full calendar. They kind of have that pressure cooker schedule. You wonder how the heck they maintain such a schedule. That's a driver. Frequently looks at their watch, or their eye shifts, or they gaze elsewhere. Again, it's just you might not be on point. You may be talking about inconsequential things, so be relevant and be to the point with that individual. I don't normally do this, but some dominant people will make phone calls while you're talking to them because they have so much on their mind. There's so much going through their head. They feel like they have so much to do. Remember their schedule we were just talking about. So they get distracted easily, and they want to get so much done at the same time. Few family photos. There's very few personal distractions typically in the workspace. So again, what dominates or what motivates that dominant type person? They're motivated by winning. They're very competitive, and we're motivated by success. So some of the things that you want to concentrate on when you're talking to them is what your organization will do for them, how they can be successful in the business, how the competition, how they can thrive in that competition. So you really want to concentrate on those motivating factors. The potential impact of joining the organization is going to be a critical part to focus on for that dominant individual. But remember, be clear, specific, brief, and to the point. Stick to business. Be prepared with supporting materials if you have it, and be well organized, because there's nothing more that dominant people hate than talking about things that aren't relevant, leaving loopholes or cloudy issues, or appearing disorganized. So just a couple things to remember when you're dealing with the dominant type person.
Awesome. All right, Dr. Joan. You brought up a lot of good points when it comes to, I want to hit on one thing about identifying that dominant person again. This person will usually have their chin up, their shoulders back. They will be very direct with you. As Joan mentioned, the eye contact, the firm handshake, and above all, not a lot of touching. I think I love what you did there, Dr. Jones. Thank you so much for that additional information. All right, let's move on to our expressive individual, our influencer, typical vocations for this individual. Now, Dr. Joan immediately said that she fell into that category of dominant and driver, but I would say her secondary category falls into influence and expressive. With me, my primary category has always been the influence and expressive, and my secondary characteristic is the dominant. So I think as we move through each one of these, try to identify, like I said, people that you know in your life, or maybe people that you've dealt with in this business, and just can you identify those people? And that's where your kind of training ground is going to begin. Your influencers or expressive people, roughly 2/3 of all of them are salesmen. I've been in sales my entire life. Expressives are actors, entertainers, evangelists, preachers, politicians. I am a pastor as well. I, for a long time with this company, did nothing but live presentations where the company was concerned. So I can speak to this individual pretty well, a lot more than I can that dominant. Approaching an expressive, the best way is wants lively discussion and interaction, wants to do most of the talking, stories sell, buys on impulse from people they like. I'll tell you this as well. Here's something about this type of personality, knowing it about myself. A lot of times these people talk way too much, and I'm guilty of doing that. But I want people to kind of understand that a lot of people that do that, it's either out of nervous habit or they're working it out as they're talking about it. In other words, I'm sure you've met people that you ask them a question, they say, well, let me think about that for a second. Your dominant person and your influencer, your expressive, both of these personalities are going to have an answer for you, and it's going to be pretty quick if you ask a question, because they like lively discussion. The influencer, the dominant, doesn't have time to waste time. He's not going to worry about being abrupt. The influencer doesn't want to be abrupt. He wants to be polite, but he wants to get people to see things his way. So this type of individual really presents a challenge in the sales arena, in the context that the salesperson and the person that's the prospect are trying to persuade each other. And so there comes a point in that conversation when two expressives or influencers are talking with each other that one has to kind of bow to the other or see the other's point. It makes it a little bit difficult, because both of them want the lively conversation. Both of them don't want any type of disagreement. They want to come to an accord. They want to feel like they came together on this, but they love that feeling that they're the one kind of leading the way. Not so much that they won, but that they're leading the way. With buying on impulse, I know for me, if I want something, I'll usually go out and shop around a lot. I I have loyalty to salespeople that I've dealt with in the past in certain arenas, but if I want something like a TV or something, I know what I already want. I go to where I know I can get the best deal. I'm not a window shopper. I'm not a person that looks around. I already kind of know. Now, if you catch me off guard, I don't have an idea, and it is very possible that I can purchase on impulse, but if I don't like you, I'm not buying from you. That's just the way it is. The influencer or the expressor, their style is ultra animated, expressive for a story to express their opinions, often going off on rabbit trails, but be aware they're also highly impulsive. Your selling approach for these individuals, active listening is key. We have discussed many times, alongside lightning speed reactions. Use stories to fit their style, frequent interruptions, and be prepared for a quick discussion. This is also what makes it challenging is you get two influencers talking with each other, or a dominant talking to an influencer. A dominant might get frustrated with the influencer because the influencer just wants to have a lively discussion. The dominant wants to get down to the point. The thing that I have found very unusual with the influential person is they can go from red hot to ice cold in just a split second. They can go from thoroughly interested to not interested at all just in a heartbeat. And that has a lot to do with keeping their attention and the discussion and having information and being able to interact with them and retort. This would be a pretty quick conversation, too, if you were in your first 6 steps of sales track. This would be a fairly quick conversation that you'd be having with them where you move right to the appointment. But this is an individual you definitely want to set that appointment in stone. You want to use that process to make sure they show up. So if we look at that influencer again, strengths are always available for others, inspiring to be around, spreads positive attitude, praise to others, limitation or tasks fall through the cracks, projects don't get finished, lack of organization. Examples, Willard Scott, Muhammad Ali, Tracy Ullman, Magic Johnson, Bill Clinton, Katie Couric. So these individuals, where do we think that we would probably most likely find these people in vocation? If we're dealing with the vocation for these particular people, these are going to be your speakers. These are going to be your talkers. So Dr. Joan, that's what I have for the influencer. Can you jump in and fill in the blanks for me?
Oh, sure. All right. So how do you spot that influencer? Can you tell that Mac is definitely that influencer? He loves to tell stories. He has anecdotes to tell. He shares personal feelings, and he expresses his opinions very readily. Those are very good clues to identify that influencer. So other things, they typically have animated facial expressions. There's much hand and body movement. They're contact-oriented. They have spontaneous actions. People tend to gravitate towards their space. They're energetic. They're poised. They're charming. They're personable. In the work environment, you're going to see decor that reflects a very lively atmosphere. They may appear cluttered, somewhat disorganized. They have notes posted on walls with little apparent rhyme or reason, but to them there's a rhyme and there's a reason. Furniture indicates warmth and contact with an extra couch or table to accommodate that conversation. They might be flashy, a little bit trendy with funner pictures, and they like to do things the fun way. So what motivates that influencer? Well, the influencer tends to be motivated by social recognition, group activities, and relationships. So really when you're going to recruit, when you're talking about the product, what they really want to know is who is in your organization, and what are they saying about it. So they're going to be the ones that talks to the gardener, and the gardener can influence them either way. You really want to talk about your organization and how it appeals to people. Remember that the influencer provides a warm and friendly environment. They don't want to deal with a lot of details. They'd rather have things in writing, but they will talk a lot depending on the situation and their mood, and they love those stories. And so these are where those stories are going to really help you sell the product.
You want to ask a lot of feeling questions. Now, this is a lot different than the dominant person. The influencer will say things like, I feel, whereas the dominant person will say, I think. Those are two different ways to identify the dominant versus the influencer. If they say, I think, they tend to probably be that dominant person. Whereas if they say, I feel, they're most likely closer to that influencing person. Now, other ways to really distinguish between them, because they both tend to be assertive. The dominant person and the influencer, they're both assertive. You can see on this spectrum here that they're in the upper quadrants because they are both assertive. So the dominant tends to have a closed posture. They're unexpressive, cool face. They have feelings that tend to be unexpressed. They're more formal. They focus on more what, and their priority is more goals and resorts. So they're more task-oriented. Whereas the influencer has more open posture. They're more animated with a warm face. Their feelings are more expressed. They're casual. They focus on the who. They're more relationship-oriented. So you can usually tell the difference if they're both assertive. Now you just need to know, are they dominant or influencer, and you want to find out, to determine that, you're going to determine whether or not they're task-oriented or more people-oriented. Remember, do you hear I think or I feel more often? That will help you determine whether it's a dominant person or an influencer.
All righty. Dr. Jones, thank you so much for that information. It's been great having you on the call this evening. People, what I want you to really remember, and I want you to kind of take away from this as well this evening, as we're moving on, is that we're making some broad generalizations here, but these are people that are readily identifiable. Do a little bit of reading on it. Go and look at some personality types. Try to identify the people in your family if you haven't already done it. Try to identify people just by the way they walk and act and dress. And then when you meet people face to face and you talk to them, it's a little bit easier to discern what's going on there. No one, remember, fits just one quadrant. Everyone is a combination of quadrants, but typically you have a dominant quadrant or a shared dominant quadrant with the rest of them falling in underneath that. This lesson is intended to bring clarity to personality types. This is not an exact science that we're giving you here. This is not a certified course that we're giving you in personality, but we're utilizing material that is considered the best material on the market today for personality discussions and how to evaluate those individuals. So here's what I want you to do. The reason I brought personality types up at this point, we've been through all 6 steps of sales track. We've learned how to set an appointment. We've talked about who we're supposed to be talking to. We've talked about in minute detail everything to do with our qualifiers and tie downs in our 15-second story. One way you can blow it is by approaching somebody the wrong way. And I think it's a great juncture now that you have the tools you need to go out there and meet people and start talking about the program and start inviting them for analysis and to see presentations and things of that nature. You want to be able to identify these people. And again, it's not an exact science, but most people are going to show you when you look at them in this relationship that they're either dominant or inspiring, or they're cautious, or they're steady, or whatever that is to them. So be aware of it, put it into practice, put it into use. You'll find that it can truly change your perspective on how you view people, and do know that people will always surprise you, especially the more you observe them, the more you become a student of people. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to me directly or worse support. And I want to thank everybody for joining us, Dr. Joan included. And thank you for joining the Worth Unlimited Agent Update and Sales Track Training. Today's lesson was personality types for September 24th, 2018. This is Max Saunders, your National Sales and Training Director. Let's get out there and do it big. Let's get out there and do it right. But at the very least, let's get out there and do something right now. This is Max Saunders saying bye-bye for now.